Hey everyone, welcome back to Exposed, and I have got an absolute banger of an episode coming your way today. I'm going to bring you on a dream Hawaiian hike that absolutely turned into a nightmare when an anesthesiologist by the name of Dr. Gerhardt Konig attacks his wife, allegedly, attempts to kill her during this hike, and what started out as a romantic celebration kind of ends with a rock to the head and a syringe full of a lethal drug. I've got all the details for you today, so let's get into it. And I'm going to tell you, if you have not heard a little bit about this story, this Hawaiian doctor, you haven't been on the internet. It is everywhere. It got me really curious as to what happened in this case. And when I tell you I deep dug into this one over about a 72-hour time period, you better believe it. And I learned a lot of things. So we're going to start off at the beginning of this one, where it all starts, and that is where Dr. Gerhardt Konig was born and when. He was born in 1978 in South Africa to his parents, Peter and Anwar Konig. Now, he was the third child and the third boy for the couple. They would have a daughter, a younger sister for Gerhardt, come along later in life, but he was the third boy and the baby as of some point in his life anyway. And the Konigs did well for themselves in South Africa. His dad was a pharmacist. His mother was a homemaker. 3 boys at home, right, with a daughter coming anytime now. And we all know that's more work than you could ever do in a pharmacy. And his mother was just killing it being a homemaker, his dad being the primary breadwinner. Now, in 9th grade, at 14 years old, the family, they wanted to move to the United States. They do, and they settle in San Diego, California. Now, his father, he works in the States doing the same thing he did in South Africa. He's a pharmacist. And his mother, she starts running a daycare out of the home. She just loved kids. The whole family was very child-oriented, and she looked at it as a great way to make money and also a great way to do what she loved, which was dealing with children. So Gerhardt, he is smart. From the time he's born, you can tell this kid has a brain on him. He attends and he graduates from high school in 1996. And from there, he attends UC San Diego. Now, during college, at the age of 20, before he even graduates, he also gets married to his high school sweetheart who he had dated since they were juniors in high school. Her name was Jessica. And despite this new responsibility of being a husband, balancing that with college, couldn't imagine having done that, it doesn't distract this guy from his studies, and he actually graduates on time with honors from UC San Diego. And not only that, he doesn't get a degree in basket weaving. This guy gets a degree in bioengineering. You're sensing that brain on him already, I'm sure. As far as his personal life, he and his wife at this time, they were in absolute love with each other. As a matter of fact, later on, Jessica would say for the first couple of years of their relationship, she said she would have to remind herself to breathe when Gerhardt would walk in the room. That's how much in love they were at this point, and that's important. Now, after graduation, Gerhardt goes to work for a bioengineering firm for the next 5 years. Look, I tried to figure out a way to explain to you exactly what he did, but it is so far above my brain capacity. Just Google it. It deals with like cells and all this stuff in science that I have absolutely no interest in, and you got to be much smarter than Jim Chapman to understand. So go check that out if you're interested. But trust me, very smart guy. Now, along the way, early in that marriage, he and Jessica would have 2 children, a boy and a girl. So he's working for this bioengineering firm, and after about 5 years, he figures out, this ain't for me. I just want to do something else. And he starts looking into going back to school and specifically going to medical school. Gerhardt wanted to become a doctor. So he decides, and I would assume he talked this over with his wife, and maybe they decide together, and they pack the family up, and he heads to Pennsylvania to attend the University of Pittsburgh Medical School. At this point, it's 2006. He goes through medical school and he graduates in 2010. From that point, he does his internships, his fellowships, and then he starts his residency. Now, it's during his residency that he and his wife had some problems. They just weren't getting along. It seemed like they were going different directions in life, and they end up getting a divorce. Now, this divorce is described as amicable. It's not one of these War of the Roses type thing where they fought and they were fighting over custody for the kids. They pretty much agreed on everything, apparently, even agreed on maybe spousal support and that sort of thing. But it was something that Jessica would also say later, that it really just came down to the demands that were placed on Gerhardt during and following medical school, and it just caused them to kind of grow apart as people. And sometimes that happens in a marriage. It's nobody's fault. You just go down two different paths, and the next thing you know, you're not in love anymore. So no real drama here, just life be lifing, right? Moving on to 2016, that was a big year for Gerhardt. He completes that residency and he is hired as an anesthesiologist for what's known as McGee Women's Hospital. This is in Pittsburgh. And he also accepted an assistant professor job at the University of Pittsburgh. And in an even bigger step, Dr. Konig decides it's time to jump back into the world of dating again. So he does that. And he does that the way everyone seemingly does that these days. He joins a dating site, and it was eHarmony to be specific. And there he connects with a woman by the name of Arielle Worthington. This is in the spring of 2016. They go out to a local bar, sparks fly, so much so that they continue seeing each other for the next 2 years. And on September 4th of 2018, they actually marry in a small private ceremony at Gerhardt's home, which incidentally is no small home. As a matter of fact, it was valued at the time at over $1 million. Nice home. What about Arielle Worthington? What's her story? Well, she was quite the catch in her own right. I'll say that first and foremost. She was 10 years younger than her new husband, Dr. Konig, and that's something not a lot of people on the internet that are researching this story know or have realized. She was actually born in 1988. In Illinois to her parents, Kevin and Judith. And she came from a more blue-collar upbringing, I guess you could say, than Dr. Konig. Her dad was a bricklayer, and she also did not come from what would be as stable an environment as her husband did. He came from a family that had, 4 kids. They moved to California, no divorces to speak of. She came from a broken household in some ways. Her parents divorced during her upbringing. Now, her mother did get remarried to who would be a stepdad in her life. She goes through life. She graduates high school. Then she attends college at Penn State. Now, this girl, Arielle, she is no dummy either. As a matter of fact, she is super freaking smart as well. And she would graduate from Penn State with a degree in nuclear engineering in 2011. Look at the big brain on Arielle, right? That degree from that school means you are extremely smart. Now, after college, she takes a job with Westinghouse as a nuclear fuel engineer. Basically, meaning this woman would work with nuclear fuel and reactor technology, which these days, holy smokes, that is the field to be in, and she had some great foresight there. Now, after working at Westinghouse for about 6 years, she links up with Dr. Gerhardt in 2016, as I told you, on that dating app, eHarmony, and they marry, as I told you, in 2018. So they start out their life together at this point, husband and wife. And in May of 2020, they have their first son together. And everything seems fine. They are getting along great. So much so, in 2022, Arielle is pregnant again. And they're excited. They're going to have their second child together. And it's during this point that they start discussing and looking into possibly relocating. Why is that? Well, Pittsburgh was having some crime issues. And look, this is in Pennsylvania. The winters in Pennsylvania, brutal, to say the least. So they wanted to go somewhere a little bit safer, maybe not as fast-paced as a big city like Pittsburgh, but also somewhere with better weather. And they figured this would be perfect to raise 2 kids. So Dr. Konig, being an anesthesiologist, he can pretty much find a high-paying job anywhere in the world, right? His wife, Arielle, thanks to COVID, bringing along this whole remote working technology life that everybody experienced during that time, she also felt confident she could find something in her field that would allow for remote working. And as a matter of fact, just prior to them making the final decision on where they were going, she did land another job with another company where it was 100% remote. So it was kind of a no-brainer. I can go anywhere you want to go. Eventually, they decide on Maui, Hawaii. And hey, why not, right? They had both been there in the past. As a matter of fact, they spent their honeymoon in Maui, Hawaii. So it checked all the boxes for them. Great weather. They were also very active. They loved the outdoors, and they specifically loved hiking, and it has plenty of that in Hawaii, hiking all these volcano areas especially. So Dr. Konig, he starts looking around at the hospitals in the Maui area. And as I told you, Arielle, she at this point worked for a company called TerraPower, and she was fully remote with that company. So no big deal for her. Dr. Konig would have to give up his assistant professor job at the University of Pittsburgh, and he knew that. And yeah, that's going to cost him a little bit of money. But hey, they were about family. They wanted to move somewhere safer with better weather and a place that they felt like was better to raise their kids. So it was a small sacrifice for him to make. Eventually, he does find a job with a smaller hospital in Maui, and it's off to Maui to make this move. Now, at this point, Dr. Gerhardt, he has 2 other kids in a prior marriage. And at this point in my research, I'm thinking, well, what about those kids? Well, his daughter was older. She was already out of high school. She was in college, and she wanted to stay put where she was at going to college. But his son, a little bit different. He was 16 at the time, and he wanted to go with his dad. What 16-year-old wouldn't say, hey, I want to go with dad and live in Maui, Hawaii? This kid's no different. Gerhardt talks to his ex-wife, and they discuss this, and she decides to let her son go to live with her dad and not give him any shit about it in Maui, Hawaii. So his 16-year-old son goes as well. Now, they also had to talk to Arielle's mother and stepfather, and they go to them and they say, we're moving to Maui. And the mom and stepdad, they're like, what? That's not going to work. You've got grandkids with you that we love to see every chance we get, and Maui is just too freaking far away. But it was apparent to both the stepdad and the mother of Arielle that there's no stopping this. So they did the second best thing, and they said, hey, what if we move to Maui? What if we find a house in Maui as well? Which they did. And everyone was excited about that. And they only moved like a minute away from where the grandkids were and where Arielle and Dr. Konig were. So at this point, you have Gerhardt his 16-year-old son, Arielle, their 2 children, one being an infant, one being 3 years old, and they all go to Maui with mom and stepdad just a few streets down, like a minute's walk away. And they lived what you would call a dream life in Maui for that first year and a half or so. Everything was picture perfect. A lot of exploring of the Hawaiian Islands. You got hiking, you got beaching, you got all the things you could ever want and beautiful weather. And on the exterior, the perfect life. But no one really has the perfect life, right? So let's talk about Jeffrey Miller. Now, Jeffrey was a senior director at TerraPower, where Arielle was employed. He was a senior boss, as a matter of fact, of Arielle's, and he was also married, incidentally. So I'm going to take you to August of 2024. And Arielle, as part of her job, she had to travel to South Africa for work. Now, on this particular trip, she was going to be accompanied by her boss, Jeff Miller. So leading up to this trip, Arielle mentions this to Dr. Konig. And at the time, according to Gerhardt, no concerns. Now, this was just a short 2-day trip. And one thing Gerhardt took note of was typically at the end of a night, anytime she would go out of town for work, she would call and let him know I'm going to bed or whatever, or at least text him some form of communication. However, on this trip, no end of night text. She basically texted that she had landed, and then he didn't hear from her until she was on the way back home. That was kind of out of character for her. So he took note of this in his mind, but he, according to his testimony, was not overly concerned about this. She returns from the trip, and Gerhardt casually asked her, "Hey, why didn't you send me anything telling me you were going to bed or let me know?" And she apologized, and she said, "Look, we had meetings till late, and then the host who was hosting us in South Africa took us to dinner. And by the time I got back, I knew you'd be sleeping. And so I was so tired, I just went to bed." And that was pretty much it. And no harm, no foul. He kind of chalked that up to strange, maybe a radar raised a little bit, but it wasn't like he rode her ass about it. Now, one thing he did do was he would start paying a little closer attention to things as it related to Arielle and her boss. And he would notice some things that would raise some eyebrows, if you will. He would notice that when Jeff and Arielle would converse over the phone, it just seemed much more friendly than professional. And that wasn't how they were talking prior to this trip. She worked out of her home, so she had a little home office, and he would overhear her a lot of times in there when she would be talking during work. And he would pick up on the fact that it's like their relationship, meaning her and her boss's relationship had changed pretty drastically. Something just didn't sit right with him. And a lot of people call that intuition, and he kind of knew something may be going on. He would describe their conversations as just an overly familiar tone, where before it was more of a professional tone. So then he would also notice that she was very protective on her phone screen. He said when he would walk in the room, for example, and she would be on her phone, it would look like she was in the middle of a text conversation. She would kind of tilt her phone in such a way that he couldn't see it, or she would close out her phone quickly. And when he would ask her things like, "Are you talking to her? Who are you chatting with over text?" she would always say her best friend. But this would happen more and more frequently. And obviously, those are red flags for this guy who already maybe was a little suspicious something was not right with her and her boss. So that would continue, those behaviors, tilting the phone, closing out text, almost like she's hiding conversations. This would occur more and more often. And in the meantime, while all of this was going on, they had also planned a trip with some very good friends of theirs. And just prior to that trip, one night, Arielle falls asleep a little bit early, and Gerhardt, he can't take it anymore. There's just too many things strange going on that she's doing. And he admits in court that he goes through her phone while she's sleeping. And look, this guy, he's really smart. It would be hard to pull the wool over his eyes. And rather than just kind of scroll through her phone like most people would do to see if anything looks suspicious, they go to the message apps and see if anything stands out as they're scrolling through text. He does something pretty smart to do. And he actually goes to her app usage section of her phone. And he wanted to see what apps she was using the most often, because with iPhones, it'll break down how many hours you use each individual app, and it'll also kind of rank them in order of the highest use to the lowest use. And he notices that her top app used is an application called WhatsApp. Now, for those not familiar, WhatsApp is an application that, number one, is supposed to be encrypted, which I actually kind of question because I've done a lot of cases where WhatsApp was used to pull up chats after they were supposedly deleted, but that's kind of how it's marketed, that it's an encrypted app. But in addition to that, it's also an application that is solely of itself, I guess you could say, meaning you don't go through the Messages app on an iPhone to chat through WhatsApp. You pull up WhatsApp and you chat through that application. And it's a little more secretive than if you were to just chat through Messages, for example. Now, he not only notices she has a WhatsApp account, which he was very familiar with WhatsApp. That's the messaging system that his hospital used primarily because of the encryption features that come along with it. But the next thing he notices is that WhatsApp had been hidden in a folder, that application on her phone. So it wasn't you opened her phone up and as you swiped right or swiped left or whatever, you come to the WhatsApp application. There was actually a folder. I don't know what it was labeled, but something that wouldn't stand out in somebody's mind. It didn't say WhatsApp application folder. It was labeled something completely different. And when you went in that folder, that's how you found WhatsApp, the actual application. So that right there is a huge red flag. She's trying to hide the fact she even has the app, right? So he pulls up the app through her phone and he notices a ton of text. And these were not work related as much as they were like friendly related text. Things like good morning. Every single morning for like a month. And it's back and forth with her boss. And they would chat, her and her boss, throughout the day about things that had nothing to do with work. And it all seemed like small talk, innocent shit. Certainly a little more in depth than what you would have with a coworker. They seemed like very, very good, friendly conversations. But what really stuck out to Dr. Konig was the amount of text that lacked context. And what I mean by that? Well, you would have a text chain of conversations where it would be Jeff, her boss, sending 4 or 5 texts in a row to Arielle, where it would look like she responded back, but the text had been deleted, where she had responded back to Jeff. So it was almost like he was reading a one-sided conversation, and it was obvious many of the texts that Arielle would respond to were deleted. So put yourself in this guy's position at this point. What do you think's going on? Well, Dr. Konig, he thought the same thing. Definitely his wife was having an affair with this guy who was also married. Now, as I mentioned, they had a trip planned within a couple of days, and he just now is finding out all this information, and his brain is swirling trying to figure out how he's going to handle this. So another interesting aspect to WhatsApp is it's not only an application that you can download on your phone, it also has the capability to be logged into from a desktop or a laptop computer where they have an actual application you can pull up online. You don't have to go through a phone to chat back and forth. You can kind of do both. And what makes that really interesting is that you can see text in real time as they are sent. So if you're logged in from a desktop, you can also be logged in from your phone, and you can kind of go back and forth as you text. And if you're on the desktop and someone's texting someone else on a phone and you have their login information, which he did, you can actually see these texts pop up in real time before somebody deletes them. So the next day, Gerhardt goes to work and he logs in to that WhatsApp application, which, as I said, he had his wife's credentials. He somehow figured those out, and he can see his wife and Jeff texting back and forth in real time that day, which in his mind is an advantage for him because she can't just delete those messages without him seeing them as long as he's looking right at the computer as she's doing it. And he would just take screenshots, right, of these communications back and forth. So that's what he does. And as they are communicating, he's just steady continuing to take these screenshots. And look, they were careful, meaning Arielle and Jeff, they were very cautious on how they would speak over text, and they would never go too far with it, where it was obvious they were in a sexual relationship. Now, there was innuendo everywhere in these texts, but they didn't come out and say, I loved having sex with you last night, that kind of thing. So as I told you, a vacation with their friends was coming up within days. And the next day, actually, they're going on vacation with these best friends. So Dr. Konig, he calls Brian, which is one of the two people that he was going on this vacation with his wife, the male side of that couple, and he confides in him about all this shit that is going on. He basically tells him, look, I'm going to confront Arielle on this trip, and I don't want to make y'all uncomfortable. I'm not going to do it in front of you. I'm going to do it in the hotel room, but we may end up leaving early or something like that. I want to give you a heads up. But he also had another reason that he confided in Brian, and that was Brian, and I'm not exactly sure how long prior to this instance with Arielle and the good doctor. I'm not sure if it was a year before that or 6 months before that, but Brian had been caught in an affair with his wife. And so he was looking for advice. Now, in Brian's case, it was a one-night stand thing, and he got caught. A little bit different than what we're talking about here with the doctor and Arielle, but he wanted his advice because Brian and his wife managed to kind of work it out and work through it. And he wanted to work this out if he could with his wife. So they go on this trip, and as soon as they get there, they go to dinner with this couple. And y'all, I can only imagine what this dinner was like with this guy knowing as soon as we're done with this, I'm going to go back to the hotel room with my wife and I'm going to have to confront her with this affair. But they do have dinner. Everyone goes back to their individual rooms, and he brings it up. He asked Arielle about this affair, and immediately she admits to it. She says what they were doing was inappropriate. She's very remorseful. She starts crying. And look, this is just me hypothesizing here. Obviously, I was not there. I have no direct knowledge. But one thing that struck me was that she came out with it quick. She accepted it quick. She never tried to deny it. And it made me think, I wonder if Brian or Brian's wife had given her kind of a heads up that this was going to happen before they went on this trip, and that she had time in her head to kind of get her story together. I mean, she was just so accepting of what he said right off the bat, and she admitted to it so fast. It just, I don't know, it seemed like she maybe would have tried to deny it first. She did the right thing. She didn't even ask him where he got the information or what proof he had of any of that. And so my suspicion was one of those two people told her that was coming, but totally me just hypothesizing there. Regardless, she seemed very regretful, And to the doctor's credit, he wanted to make this work. Now, he had already, in this couple of days, since he's known this was going on, had done a lot of research on how to deal with it when these sort of things happen to help you get past it in a marriage. And one of the suggestions was the person who had the affair would have to move out of the home for a couple of months and remove themselves from the situation. And you kind of work on this rekindling type thing. Now, the problem with that was they've got two small kids at this time, 1-year-old and 4-year-old at home. And they didn't want to disrupt these two babies' lives. And so that would be a complicating factor to be able to do something like that. And they figured out pretty quick that's not going to be something we're going to be interested in doing. And Arielle was telling Dr. Konig, I'll do whatever you need me to do. And in his research, among many suggestions, was the person who did the cheating, they need to be forthcoming with any questions that the person that was cheated on had. So, for example, if Dr. Konig says out of the clear blue sky, let me see your phone, I want to go through it. The proper way to handle that would be to give him your phone and let him go through it. And what that is supposed to accomplish is build trust back in that relationship. Now, another thing is to be very open about the affair and the feelings involved in the affair, which also builds trust back, according to these books he was reading on the subject and speaking to her about. And he would also buy her copies of these books for her to read. One of them, as a matter of fact, was specifically about understanding how your spouse is feeling after they've been cheated on, those sort of things. So both of them are in agreement on making this thing work, even to the point of starting to go to a therapist. So they get home after this trip, and everything seemed as good as it should be. And she seemed to be very interested in working everything out. However, a couple of weeks past incident, she would get more and more inconsistent about the things that she agreed to. For example, he would ask her a couple times to see her phone, and she would start to get frustrated with him for this. And I'm not judging it one way or the other. That's just the facts. He said he would notice it would kind of start to piss her off when he would want to see her phone. And he would say later, in his mind, she was very gung-ho to make this thing work at the beginning. She wanted to stay together. And then after about a month, it just seemed like she wasn't on board with all of the things they had agreed to anymore. Although she still wanted to work out issues and stay together, just not in the way that he wanted to. So by December of 2024, there was kind of a switch with her, according to Dr. Konig, where she would start kind of minimizing what she did. And it's important to mention, I'm going to tell you right here, she never admitted to a sexual affair. Now, she told him it was an emotional affair, that yes, they flirted with each other and flirted very flirty over the text, but it had never gotten that far. Now, again, I have no direct knowledge, but it did come out in the trial that these two, Arielle and Brian, had texted each other over 10,000 times in just a few months, back and forth, all day long. Same people that were alone together in a whole nother country. Now, I don't know if I believe that she supposedly did not have sex with him, but I suppose it's possible. I got no proof one way or the other, so we'll go with what she's saying, but I can understand the doubts in his mind for sure. Now, also, I did not mention this earlier, but he did email her boss's wife and let the boss's wife know that that affair was going on. In addition to that, one of the stipulations he had for this marriage, for them to stay together and work on this relationship rather than get a divorce, was that she had to end all contact with Brian. And that makes sense. Now, he would say if it was something work related that she absolutely had to deal with Brian, It could be through email only. And of course, she was never to go anywhere where it would just be her and Brian again. There would have to be someone else there. And I think that's reasonable. It makes all the sense in the world to me, but it's important to mention because it's going to play a key role in just a minute. Now, back to it. They're working on this thing, and in March of 2025, late March, it's Arielle's 36th birthday. And just prior to that birthday, they start talking about what they want to do. And Gerhardt mentions to her about a hiking trail that he's always wanted to check out. And look, these two hike together constantly, and they both love to hike together. So this is something they both enjoy. It was on the island of Oahu, and he asked her, hey, do you want to go do this hiking trip on your birthday? And she says, yes. And that's just what they did. So March 24th of 2025, they get there. And just prior to this trip, I do want to mention this. Within a few months of it, they had updated their life insurance policies. Now, people may say, oh, there you go. Life insurance always leads to murder. And that's not necessarily true. If you're married and you got young kids, you for sure need life insurance. That's the responsible thing to do. And they have not done this yet in life. They didn't have life insurance policies. So Gerhardt, he handles this and he takes out a policy on himself, meaning if he dies, Arielle gets $1.5 million. And he also takes one out where if Arielle dies, he gets $250,000. Total opposite of what you'd think, right? And it made all the sense in the world because he's the breadwinner in the home. She made great money, but I mean, this guy was an anesthesiologist and he got paid. He was the primary breadwinner. So if something happened to him, that income they would be missing out on would kind of make that family whole, at least for a little while. I really don't think it had anything to do with what went down in this story, but it's important to mention, and it was mentioned in the trial as a possible motive. So there you have it. Now back to March 24th. Gerhardt gives this birthday card to Arielle, and it's a loving birthday card. I'm going to read it to you quickly. I'm going to tell you exactly what it said verbatim. It reads, "Happy birthday, Angel Face. There isn't an obstacle in this world too hard for me to fight through for you. I would take on anything just to see you smile. You're the kindest, most giving, and selfless person I know, putting others before yourself with so much love. You're the heart of our family, fun, fearless, and a terrific mom. The kids and I hit the jackpot with you. Love always, G." And I mean, pretty heartfelt card. Most guys, and those of you that have husbands out there, you know how we roll typically. It's just like we sign our name or, love whoever. But in this case, he took some time and it sounds like he put some thought into what he wrote. So there you have it. So he gives her this birthday card, and they were only in Oahu for a couple of days in order to fit this hike in. So they wanted to do it as early as possible because they had dinner reservations that night. So they leave at around, 9 o'clock in the morning to go hike. And they get to the trailhead. And there are a couple of other hikers there, and they see it's two females, and they see these hikers, and Arielle kind of waves at them, and in her mind, they're looking for the trailhead. And sometimes when you're doing this hiking, it'll be kind of hard to find the trailhead. And so she tells Dr. Konig, hey, let's show them where the trailhead is. And he's like, man, I really don't want to do that because I want to be alone with you. And if we go start talking to them, they're going to want to hike with us. And, this is kind of like your birthday and I want it to be special. So they didn't say anything to these two people. So I'm going to give you both people's story going forward. And we're going to start with Arielle. And I'm going to tell you her details of what happened. She said they go on the trail and it's a rocky trail. And they passed several cliff faces, and it was very uneasy on this trail, according to Arielle. And she tells Dr. Konig she didn't want to continue forward at one point. She was very nervous. It was very windy that day, and they were going up pretty high on these cliff faces, etc. And she was concerned she might fall or something. She's not having fun anymore. Let's just say that. So she said that at that point, Gerhardt kind of goes past her and he hikes up for about 5 more minutes. And that's how they judge distance. They say, okay, he hiked up 5 more minutes. Then he comes back and he tells her how beautiful it was. And he kind of tries to convince her to keep going, but she's like, screw that. I'm scared. We're heading back down the trail. So they start heading back down the trail. And they're getting along at this point. They're talking. They're taking pictures. They're taking selfies. As a matter of fact, as they're doing this, they're sending pictures to family. And so her story was she takes a picture by a tree and that he snapped the picture. And she said at that point, she goes to walk past him and he totally out of the clear blue sky freaks out, grabs her by the arm and basically says, I'm so sick of this shit. And he's got both of her arms and he pushes her toward the cliff as if he were going to throw her off this cliff. And she said they start wrestling. And she said, he's dragging me closer and closer to the edge. And so she gets an idea. I'm going to throw myself on the ground and that'll stop him from being able to drag me. Now, keep in mind, Dr. Konig is not that big a guy. He's like 165 pounds and he's 5'9" or something like that. She's like 5'7" and 145 pounds. So they're pretty much the same size. And so it wouldn't take much, I guess, for her to get him onto the ground on top of her, which eventually he is. And he's kind of straddling her at this point. And they just go to fighting. And she said while he was on top of her, he pulls out a syringe, which she kind of knocks out of her hand. And she said next, he took off his backpack with one hand and he starts digging in it with one hand while he's holding her down with the other hand. She claimed he had a vial in his hand while he was digging through the backpack. So there's a lot going on here. So she's screaming all kinds of shit and he is fighting her. She said at that point she bit his arm and she grabs him by the nuts and she just like has a death grip on his testicles. So she continued screaming and then she said out of nowhere he slams her head with a rock. And she said in her mind she was trying to knock him out so he could drag her to the edge. Now at that point she said she hears a woman's voice say, "We are here and we are calling 911. And that's the 2 hikers. And she said at that point, Gerhardt froze and she was able to get away and catch up down the trail with these 2 hikers and call police. So that's her story. Now let me give you Gerhardt's story. Better yet, I'm going to let you hear Gerhardt's version out of his own mouth. Listen to this.
Continuing on the hike, what happens at some point? What did something happen that led to an argument?
Yes.
Tell the jury what happened that led to an argument. Well, first of all, how far up into the hike was it?
Not very far. Just like 5 minutes. Like after about 5 minutes of hiking, you get to a part where it flattens out a bit, and the edge isn't like the cliffside isn't open, but there's a couple of spots where you can get to the cliffside if you wanted to. So we're kind of still in that area, the same area that picture was taken.
Okay.
And Ari says, "Hey, I need to talk to you about something. I'm working on this project with Jeff Miller, and I'm gonna need to travel with him again, and I need you to be okay with that. Is that okay?"
And so she was kind of telling you like, "Hey, there's just things at work going on. I need you to be okay with this. And asking you to trust her."
Yes.
Okay. And again, you mentioned you guys weren't talking about the affair at home anymore because of counseling, correct?
That's correct.
And you guys weren't talking about it in counseling a lot at that time?
We hadn't gotten to
That.
kind of the core of it yet.
So she brings this up. What is your reaction to it?
I'm very surprised, yeah.
Okay. Were you upset and angry?
I wasn't angry. I was surprised and upset, and I told her no. Like I'm not okay with that. And not only am I not okay with that, like I'm never going to be okay with that. Like we haven't dealt with that part. Like the only reason why I was okay with her still even working there is because we had placed these limits on their communication. But in my mind, like she still needed at some point to quit her job, and this was only put on hold while we were trying to deal with all these other things. She basically said like, well, I can't quit my job right now because I don't even know if I want to stay with you. So we were dealing with like the issues that she brought up first, but it's not like any of the affair had been resolved at all. Like it had just kind of been put on hold. And so
how did you feel that she would even think that this would even be okay?
Yeah, I mean, it made me realize that we were just not on the same page at all in terms of, like, here I am just kind of like sublimating my feelings and focusing on her hurt and waiting patiently for her to do the same to me. And this made me feel like she wasn't intending on doing that ever.
So what did you say back to her? Were you guys kind of arguing about it?
Yeah, we were for sure arguing.
Okay, and then so what did you say anything to her?
I just said,
out?
Yeah, I said like I need you to move out. Like this has gone far enough. I need you to move out. And I'm going to tell people why you're moving out, and I'm going to show them what you did, because like unless you face this and unless you take full accountability for this, like we're never going to get through this.
So and that was like after you guys had been kind of arguing for a while about. I mean, an argument starts. You guys are arguing. You're telling her no. You're telling her all these things.
Yeah, I mean the argument developed more slowly than what just happened, and there was other things said too. But that's how it culminated with you telling her, well, if that's the case, if that's how you feel, you got to move on. Yes.
Okay. What did she say anything to you about her mom and Gianna?
She did. So like earlier in the conversation, she'd be like, well, what if my mom chaperones my work trips with them? And I was like, no, like I'm still not okay with that. Like that's not a long-term viable solution. And then later in the argument, when things kind of got heated, she was like, well, actually, my mom just said that she'll chaperone the trip and she thinks Jeff is interesting and can't wait to meet him. And I'm like, you're obviously telling them a whole different version of what happened than me.
So in the argument, in her effort to say for you to be okay with it and go on the trip, she said, well, what if my mom chaperones me?
Yes.
Okay. After, it comes to this point in the argument where you say, well, you know what, you got to move out there. I'm going to tell everybody what you did. I mean, it was it got to kind of it was not a good conversation, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay, so what did you do next?
I stomped off. I just stomped off up the trail. And this was a point where we were both really kind of just upset with each other, and I went one way and she went the other way.
How far up did you go?
5 to 10 minutes.
Okay. Why did you turn around?
I was kind of at a loss of not kind of a loss. I was I just didn't want to be there. Like.
Did it make sense for you to keep going on this hike?
No. I like 5 to 10 minutes in, I was like realizing kind of where I was, and I was like, I don't want to be here. I want to go home and like start dealing with what we need to deal with. I don't want to, I got to the point where it opens up and it's like these beautiful views, and I'm like there by myself and upset, and I was like, I don't want to be on this hike by myself, upset, and I don't want to do this hike. I'm going to come back and do this hike at a different time when I'm happy. I was really looking forward to doing the hike. When
you headed back down, were you expecting Arielle to be where you had left her?
No.
And where were you expecting her to be?
I thaught she went to the car because I saw her head down the trail.
And there was testimony that she said when you got there, you said, "Oh, you're still here." Did you say that to her?
Yes.
And is that because you assumed she had gone back to the parking lot?
Yes.
How far away from the parking lot were you guys when this argument started?
Like 5 minutes.
Okay.
Or less, probably. Yeah.
Okay. Now you get back. What is her demeanor and behavior like now?
Like a 180 reversal, basically. So she was like extremely apologetic. And said, basically, I'm so sorry. You're right. Like, I need to take accountability, and like, let's just, not ruin the day. I don't want to ruin the day. I don't want to ruin our trip. And let's keep talking about this in therapy. And she said, like, I won't travel with Jeff.
Did you guys end up taking a selfie?
Yeah. First, she was like, again, like almost manic, like super happy, and was trying to basically, get me to be in a better mood. And she was like, I'm gonna climb this tree, take pictures of me in this tree. And so she handed me her phone, and I took some pictures of her in the tree. And then after that, she said, let's take a selfie by the cliff's edge.
That was her idea.
Yes.
Okay. Did you guys take one?
We did.
And what happened after that?
Right after the selfie, I just remember kind of staying at the edge there and looking over the edge and just kind of still in thought about everything that had just happened and what's going on. And then I felt like a shove, and I was almost pushed over the edge.
Okay. You felt a shove. Okay. Who shoved you?
Ari did.
What did you do right after that?
Barely caught myself and turned around and looked at her and was like, "What the fuck was that?" Like,
okay. Turned around and was like, "What? Like, was like kind of in shock. Like, what the fuck was that?"
Yes.
Okay. And then, did you move towards her?
Yeah, I did. I was like, just asking her, like, what was that, and started walking towards her, because at this point she was like 5 or 10 feet away from me.
Okay. So you walk towards her, and you mentioned when you're walking towards her, where were your hands?
Out.
Okay. Now, did you get close to her?
Yes, eventually, yeah. Well,
And by the way, when you start walking towards her, is she saying anything?
not initially, but I turn around and I'm asking her, like, what the hell's, what the fuck just happened and what's going on. And as I'm starting to walk towards her, she starts yelling.
She starts yelling.
Yeah, help me, help me.
Okay. And then what happens?
And then I just keep walking to her, like, what are you doing?
Were you telling her, like, why are you screaming?
Yeah, what are you doing? And I get to her and I'm like, touching her, just putting my hands on her arms, and I was like, what are you doing? What's going on?
What happens then?
She keeps yelling, and she kind of grabs my wrists and throws herself on the ground and pulls me down with her.
So now you guys are on the ground?
Yes.
Okay. When you're on the ground, what starts to happen?
She's holding on to me, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on, but I'm also at this point trying to let go of, like, trying to get free, because she's like actively holding on to me. Like, she has her leg, like, wrapped around one of my legs, and like is actively holding on to me and is yelling. And so I'm trying to, get free, and I get my one arm free, and I try to use it to get my other arm free, and she grabs me by the testicles. And
okay. Let me stop you there. Did you ever, in the course of this whole thing you described so far, ever try to pull her towards, push her off, or drag her towards the cliff's edge?
No, not at all.
Okay. So you guys you're on the ground. She's kind of holding on to you. You guys are would you just kind of like a scuffle going on?
Yes.
Okay. And her legs wrapped around you.
Yes.
You mentioned we got right up to the point where you said she grabbed your testicles. Is that right?
Yes.
How hard did she grab it?
I mean, this was, like,
pretty hard.
She, like, was holding on to me by my testicles, basically, like, that hard.
Okay. Did she grab it and let go, or did she grab it and hold on?
She grabbed it and held on.
Now, what happens after she does that?
Then I try to free my testicles, and so I'm, like, thrashing with and I get both hands free, and I'm trying to get her to let go of my testicles. And then she hits me with a rock on the side of the face.
Okay. She's holding on to your testicles. You're kind of focused on that, obviously. And then at some point while you're focused on that, you
and it happened all really fast.
Yeah.
But
I'm glad you raised that up. Was this, like, happening slowly where you had
it
time
all
to...
happened within, like, probably less than a minute, maybe
quickly,
slightly more than a minute, but 2 minutes or something. From the moment that, like, we were on the ground and she was grabbing my testicles, was like...
It happened quickly.
Everything after the grabbing of the testicles happened very quickly.
Okay. And you weren't timing it or anything.
No.
This is just your estimate. Okay. So now, she's holding on to you, she's squeezing your testicles, and you kind of dealing with that. And she's on the ground, and you're kind of on top of her?
Yes.
Okay. And you said then you felt you got hit with the rock.
Yes.
Where'd you get hit?
On the left side of my face.
How many times?
She kept doing it. The first blow she landed really well, and after that I was able to block
Okay.
fairly well. She did like land a couple more, but not as bad as the first one.
Does she still got your testicles?
Yeah, so she's like holding my testicle and just like hitting me like this.
And now do you stop dealing with your
I'm
testicles?
just focused on the rock at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did it hurt when you got hit with the rock?
You did.
Could we publish what's in evidence as Exhibit D30, Your Honor? Yes. Okay. Okay. Gerhardt, is this where you got hit with the rock?
Yes.
There? Is that the area?
Yes.
All right. We can take that down. Now, you get hit with the rock. Explain to the jury what happens next and why.
I was able to wrestle the rock out of her hand.
Does she still have your testicles?
Yes.
Still squeezing them?
Yes.
What do you do?
I was able to like. So we're like she's hitting me and I'm like blocking and then I start like, and I get
Is
her
there a
wrist.
scuffle over the rock?
Yes.
Is it near her face?
Yes. I mean it's
And then what
right.
happens?
And I finally get the rock.
What'd you do?
I hit her with the rock.
How many times do you think you hit her?
I hit her 2 times.
And when you did, was she still holding on to your testicles?
Yes.
At least initially?
Yes.
Okay. Why did you hit her? Why did you react that way?
Just on instinct to defend myself.
Okay. How fast was this all happening? Pretty fast?
Really fast.
Okay. In between when she hit you with the rock and in between the time she hit you with the rock and when you hit her with the rock, were you able to safely retreat and get away from her?
No.
Yeah. Why not?
She was holding on to me.
Including your testicles?
Yes.
Did you hit her in the face or the eye with the rock?
No.
Where you said 2 times, where did you hit her?
On the side of the head.
Okay. So we've seen these photos of the stellate laceration. You caused that by hitting her, right?
Yes.
Okay. Did you continue to hit her after those 2 hits?
No.
And why not?
Because she stopped fighting. She let go of my testicles, and I was
Okay.
able to stand up.
And then you stopped.
Yes.
There was testimony about the 2 witnesses. Did you stop hitting her because the witnesses showed up?
No, I didn't know that they were there until after I stood up.
Okay. Did you see blood?
Yes.
Was there a lot of blood?
There was a lot of blood.
Did you see her kind of scoot down towards the witnesses?
Yes.
Did you try to stop her in any way?
No.
You let her get to them.
Yes.
Did you hear her yelling to the witnesses, he's trying to kill me?
Yes.
Gerhardt, did you have any syringes on the mountain that day?
No.
Did you try to poke her or stab her with any syringes?
No.
Okay. Now, Gerhardt, she scoots away. She's now with the 2 witnesses. You see a lot of blood. What do you physically do now?
I'm just in a daze, and I just kind of watch her crawl away and then leave with the other 2 hikers.
Okay, she got the hikers. What do you do next? Was her bag and your bag there?
Yeah, so I just kind of reflexively gather up all of our stuff, and then I start walking up the trail.
Let me ask you this. At this point, immediately following what just happened, you saw, you guys had this scuffle. You saw a lot of blood. What was your state of mind and emotional state like right now, right at this point that we're at?
Severe emotional distress.
How did you feel at that time about the fact that you had responded and defended
Horrible.
yourself? Let me finish the
Horrible.
question.
Sorry.
How did you feel about the fact that you, and you know, even though you say it was, you know, you were defending yourself, how did you feel about that she was bleeding?
I felt horrible.
Okay. Did you ever plan on hurting her that day?
No.
Did you ever want to hurt her that day?
No.
You reacted to defend yourself in the heat of that moment. You said yes.
Yes.
But did you still feel bad about it?
Yes.
You mentioned that you were in some kind of extreme emotional distress, I think you said. Okay.
Yes.
Did you become, at some point after that, suicidal?
Yes.
Why? Tell the jury why. To the best of your understanding.
I just felt hopeless at that point in terms of everything. Like I felt horrified about what I did to her. That I caused this to her. That I had resorted to violence against my wife, the person who I loved the most in the world, and just kind of felt hopeless in terms of our relationship too.
Okay. And that being said, I mean, in that moment, were you defending yourself when you reacted that way?
Yes. Yes.
What did you do next? Now you're heading up the hill. What do you do next?
I just kind of kept walking up and kind of got to the same place that I had made it the last time, where the trail opens up and you're finally on the ridge, and
Were you thinking about jumping?
I'd already decided. I decided to jump, and kind of last second was made the decision to call Emil just to say goodbye.
Now, Emil is his son from a prior marriage, and he does indeed call Emil, and he places 2 calls, and Emil testified about these 2 calls, and he said his dad FaceTimed him and told him that his stepmom, Arielle, had been cheating on him and that he had tried to kill her, and that he planned to jump off that cliff. And imagine your dad calling you and telling you this. He said he told his dad not to do it, and he was struggling to recall many of the points of that first call. And it's important to mention he was struggling to recall many points of that first call. Now, he did ask his dad what was on his shirt because he saw blood, because this was a FaceTime call, and his dad said it was Arielle's blood. He said the call then ended, and he goes to Arielle's parents' house, and he tells them what his dad had told him. So a second call gets placed to him from his dad via FaceTime. This is about an hour later. Dad asked him if he was going to tell anybody, to which he responded yes. And he said that he was going to jump. And again, his son tries to talk him out of it. And Dad says, I got to go before the police get here. And he hangs up. So in this next clip, I think it's important what Dr. Konig said about these conversations with his son, because to me, this is the entire cusp of this case. If he in fact told his son he tried to kill Arielle, that seals it, right? So here's Dr. Konig's version.
First of all, where were you when you was it a FaceTime?
It was FaceTime, yes.
Okay. Where were you when you did this FaceTime call?
It was in a spot where the trail wasn't right next to the cliff edge, because the cliff edge at that point wasn't really an edge. It was like a 10-foot kind of sloped part, and then the edge. And so I was basically between the cliff edge and the trail, kind of hanging on to the side of the mountain.
Was it a pretty kind of steepish area?
Yeah, very steep.
And were you kind of like on the side of the mountain? Mm-hmm. So you gotta.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay. And so just to be clear, the place you FaceTimed him from, was that the place that the incident took place?
No.
Okay. on the FaceTime, would it have looked like you were on kind of the edge of a mountain?
Yes.
Were you on speakerphone?
Yes.
I mean, like holding it where he could see your face?
Yes.
No.
And I showed him the view and where I was. Like,
there was testimony from police officers that it was a windy day and notoriously windy area. Do you recall it being pretty windy that day?
It was windy, yeah, up there.
So you're on the side of a cliff, mountain. You have him on speaker on FaceTime. It's windy. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. You were extremely emotional at that time?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the context of this phone call, correct?
Yes.
Did you tell him that Arielle you were calling him to say goodbye, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Was your purpose to explain to him every last detail of what happened?
No.
Okay. But you did tell him several things, right?
Yes.
Did you tell him that Arielle had been having an affair?
I did.
Okay. Did you tell him that, she got hurt, her head was bleeding?
Yeah, after he asked about the blood on my shirt.
Now, did the word kill come up in the conversation?
It probably did.
What do you recall explaining to him about that?
I don't recall explaining. The only thing I can think of is that I said that she said I tried to kill her.
Okay. So let's break back that up.
Yeah.
So you told him that the blood was hers, yes?
Yes.
And you're telling him that you're going to jump.
And yes.
Okay. And did you tell him something about we're going to get to the part about the police. But you're telling him about how you're going to jump and you're saying you heard her say to the witnesses he tried to kill me. Okay. Were you explaining that to email?
No. So
What
I
were
was
you saying?
I was talking to myself at the same time too, and I was basically saying because I remember saying wow, this is so hard because it turns out killing yourself is a hard thing to do once you actually go and do it.
Okay.
And so I was talking to him about saying goodbye and she had an affair and those things, but then I was also kind of talking to myself and I think I was saying to myself she said I tried to kill her. She said I tried to kill her.
Okay. Were you confessing to him that you were trying to kill Ari that day?
No.
Okay. Did you have an intention to kill Ari that day?
No.
Okay. Would you have said it that way? I tried to kill Ari that day.
No.
Okay. But you don't dispute that the word kill probably came up.
No.
Okay. And can you understand how Emil in that conversation could have got that impression?
Yes.
Okay. So what else happens in this first call? What do you mean when you say he tried to convince you not to jump?
He just and I mean, to his credit, I mean he just reminded me that I had a choice basically.
Okay. Reminded me that I have a choice.
Yeah. Because he said do you really have to do this?
After that, he got off the phone with him. You didn't jump, right?
No.
Okay. There was a second call an hour later,
Yes.
and he testified that he was at his Ari's parents' house. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, during that call, did he tell you what he told to Ari's parents?
Yes.
What did he tell you that he told Ari's parents?
He said, he said, I told them that you tried to kill Ari.
Okay. And what was your reaction to that?
I was like, why would you say that? And then,
You didn't mean that in the first call?
right.
Okay, so you're telling him why
And
did
I
you
didn't,
tell him?
at that point I was so confused at why he would say that.
Okay. And then what did you say to him after that?
Then I said, I gotta go, I gotta get off the phone.
And did you say to him, because you were going to kill yourself again?
Yes.
Did you say to him,
I said, I never mind, I gotta think about this. I'm probably gonna kill myself.
okay. Did you say something to him about, I got to go so the police won't find me?
Yes.
And what did you mean by that? Why were you trying to avoid the police?
I didn't want my choice of killing myself taken away at that time until I had made the decision to either do it or not.
So what do you think? Now, while you're mulling on that, let's get back to it. And while Arielle is heading down that mountain, after about 6 hours, so does Dr. Konig. He heads down the trail and hears a car at some point behind him when he gets on the main road. And sure enough, it's the police, and he is taken into custody, in his words, rather roughly. Now, let's talk about the syringe. Remember, his wife, Arielle, had mentioned he pulled out a syringe and tried to inject her with it. So his story was that there was a work bag that was with him, because when they got him back to the headquarters to question him, they dumped out the bag he had with him and had all kinds of syringes in it. And he had to explain that. And he said, look, that's an OR bag that I use when I'm on call. And before we came on this trip, that OR bag was with me, and Arielle knows that I carry all that stuff in it. Now, why would he bring it on the hike? That's my question. Not that he had it with him in Oahu, but why would he have it on that hike? And his statement was, the last shift before this trip, he had the bag with him, and so he just brought it with him. He didn't go home first. He went straight to the airport. Okay, that might even make sense. But why did you have it on that hike? That's questionable to me. So we'll move on. This was on March 24th, 2025. And on March 28th, he was indicted on a second-degree murder charge. Now, during his plea hearing, he pleads not guilty. And it's during this hearing that his bail is denied, and he is going to have to stay in jail until his trial. In the meantime, in May of 2025, Arielle files for divorce, and on March 19th of 2026, his trial starts, and everything that I just told you comes out. Prosecutors, they're claiming that he tried to knock her out with a rock, inject her with syringes full of drugs, all in an attempt to push her off that cliff. And the doctor's story is that this was all self-defense. So over the course of the next 3 weeks, everyone testifies, and this was a tough one for me personally. I struggled to understand why the doctor would take so much risk. I listened to all the testimony, and to be honest, I found the doctor more believable than his wife. She just seemed like she was hiding something on that stand. But regardless, in the end, I think it was Dr. Konig's son, and his testimony, it was very credible. Wouldn't make sense why he tried to lie about his dad. I think this is what kind of sealed it for me. I mean, I believe his son when he said, my dad said, quote, his stepmom was cheating on his dad and he tried to kill her, unquote. So the question is, did I think Dr. Konig is a cold-blooded killer? No, I don't. Do I think he had some sort of plan that day to kill his wife? No, I don't. I think she asked him about traveling with her boss on that hike, and he just fucking lost it. But what would a jury think? Well, after 8 hours of deliberation, they would agree, but they didn't find him guilty of second-degree murder on a lesser charge of attempted manslaughter. And that's the difference between a life sentence and a maximum of 20 years in jail. So this verdict occurred on April 8th, and his sentencing is scheduled for August 13th. And of course, I will keep you posted on that verdict, but there you have it. And I think the jury got it right here. Look, second-degree murder has to have some intent to it. I think this guy flipped out, and I don't know that he was even trying to kill her. It's hard for me to explain. This is just my opinion, but I think a manslaughter or attempted manslaughter charge is more appropriate and probably more accurate. I'd love to know your opinion on it. Thank you so much for listening. Check out the Patreon. I'm going to upload a bunch of files on this case. Of course, we do commercial-free early releases, bonus episodes, quarterly gifts, and files all through the Patreon site. I love and appreciate every single one of those people for supporting what I do here on Exposed. Couldn't do it without them. Thank you so much. And until next time, for Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite, I'm your host, Jim Chapman. Much love.